A phenomenon, okay? We have basically an aspect of reality that we're arguing over what the cause of is. I'm going to make an analogy. I love this one. I thought about it the other day. If my car doesn't start, I put my key in, it doesn't go. I start thinking about what the cause of that effect is, right? How many people think sometimes it's the battery? No, it's the alternator. How many get confused on that? I'm sure a lot of you do. But no one knows what it is yet until the mechanic goes through and deducts what is and is not the problem. You may have your mom come out, oh, it's got to be the wiring. There may be a litany of hypotheses on why this phenomenon is taking place. Car not starting. It's real simple. So we take it to the mechanic shop. Big mechanic comes out. He says it's something completely different than we all would have we wouldn't even have expected, because we don't know that stuff like they do. So we have our phenomenon. The car's not starting. We have this list of hypotheses. We have this list of possible reasons why the car won't start. And what we do in the scientific method is we check off each hypothesis or possible cause of why it won't work. We check them off as we test them. We don't say, one of the hypotheses is that we didn't smile enough when we were getting gas, and that's why the car god is mad at us, and so it's not starting. That's absurd. We would never say something like that. We would say, what is something that could really be connected to this physically? Maybe it's my hand. Whatever it is. We go through and we deduct each one as we try them out. And we get to the culprit. Boom, that's our hypothesis. That's our theory. That's our fact. The car won't start because this wire was loose. Boom. We have the cause of the phenomenon. What Paul does, and the tag does, the transcendental argument for God, the tag is a fancy cosmological design argument. It's another hair on the cosmological head of Christian apologetics. All it does is it says we have a phenomenon. We don't like your hypothesis, so ours is right by default. We're the champions by default. But see, even if the battery isn't the culprit, that's just part of your responsibility. You have to show us why yours is the culprit. If you offer a hypothesis, such as God did this, God designed this, you have to prove it. You don't win by default. Just because you don't like my hypothesis, even if I grant it that mine is wrong, I offered it. Naturalism, natural law, accounts for certain aspects of our reality and our phenomenon. You may not like it. Now I'm only halfway. The theist still has to prove that that hypothesis was, in fact, the culprit. If it's not proven, then he can't hold it. I mean, you can hold it if you find some instrumental value in holding it for maybe some social aspects of going to church still, and you have a business here where everybody goes and gets milkshakes and hamburgers, and you don't want to lose business because you're part of the church community. I know the Mormons do that to their believers. But my point is that if you claim to be a believer, great. But let's see proof of the hypothesis. If logic is such this big deal, I don't think it's a big deal. It's based on one, me, you, everybody here. Logic is fluff, as I have said it before. I know he's steaming because of that. But the deal is that logic is based on a singular thing, a variable, a iota, something. Simple. Morality. What is morality? It's not a phenomenon. What's the big deal? It's behavior. You mean I have to have a God to behave? God explains how I react? Induction? Let's talk about induction. Big thing for taggers. What is induction? Particular experience. Gain personal experience. You mean to tell me that God is responsible for me gaining experience? I have to have a God for me to even acquire anything? Prove it. I'm ready. Let's look at the data. Let's look at the hypothesis. Don't just reject mine and go, I'm ready, I won. Let's see what you have to offer. But you haven't dismissed mine with proof. The impossibility of the contrary, defense for the tag, is a universal negative. You don't know everything about the contrary hypotheses yet. How can they all be impossible? How can yours just win by default without you offering any kind of data, proof that your God is responsible for what I said? I find it interesting that Paul says that I beg the question. Well, begging the question is assuming a term in your premise and in your conclusion. And I don't know if I said that right. Did I say that right? I think I did. I'm not assuming I'm an atheist. I know I'm an atheist. Just because your worldview says that I don't exist, well, now we're just going to get into a battle over worldviews. Visions on reality. So what? I reject that worldview. I showed why. I didn't really unpack a lot because I thought that our openings were a little short, and I was sidetracked and I took another path. But the bottom line is that I reject that hypothesis because it hasn't shown us anything. Show it to me. I'm ready. I'm willing. I think that if there's an afterlife, why wouldn't somebody want an afterlife? I do. I know atheists that say this life is enough. No way. I want to keep going. Who wouldn't? But how do I know that Christianity is true? How do I know that what we're reading in the Bible is the right path? Because all their paths are wrong? Well, why are they wrong? Because they contrast our presuppositions? How does that prove yours right and those wrong? You're complaining, that's it. And I'm okay with that. I'm a relativist. You don't like it, you don't like it. Rape is wrong to me, but there's a reason why people rape. Murder is wrong to me, but there's a reason why people murder. I could murder tomorrow. I don't know. I hope I wouldn't. Does Paul change his opinion about a sports team after or before they play? Every epistemological position, paradigm, is temporal. Temporal. Does Paul know he's going to be a Christian next week? Next year? 10 years? I never thought I would ever be an atheist. Never. Irresistible grace. Preservation of the saints. The tulip. I was a huge Calvinist. Not as good as Gene Cook. But I was a Calvinist. I wanted to learn. I was seeking God through that Reformed theology. And I would have never, ever thought that I would reject that hypothesis or that proposition. And I did. And I did so on the antithetical, prescriptive patterns that it casts on reality. And eventually, I just couldn't take it anymore. I loved Jesus. I loved Paul. Peter was starting to get cool. He started getting his stuff together. Revelations was a little weird, but I got it. There was a big transition in my life last year, 4 or 5 months. It was very painful. And if anyone wants to call me and talk to me about it, fine, I'll tell you more about my apostasy. But I'm willing to walk back in that worldview if you show me God.